Today, we're going to start putting together the stack of tooling I was talking about to hold the plate and create a way of making a nest so that we can hold the plate upside down in a nice way. This is a regular epoxy layup. I'm going to show you, hopefully, if you haven't worked with epoxy before, this will be informative. I think that it's really great to work with epoxy when you want things to come out straight and flat because there's no water in it, and it can't change. It can't change the size or shape of the material you're trying to glue up. So here we have, oh boy, this is pretty full. 150 grams of resin, and it's this is a 5-to-1 mix ratio, so we're going to need 30 grams of hardener. Okay, so we have 180 grams total. This will be a little challenging to mix in this little cup, but we're going to get it done. Got to get it all the same color. It's important to mix it properly. Obviously, unmixed epoxy is a no-no. And so this is 180 grams of epoxy total. It's 150 grams of resin and 30 grams of hardener. And you can see it's pretty low viscosity, so it's a little bit of a mess, but we'll try and work cleanly. It's important to keep this stuff off your body. It's formulated to be low toxicity because the folks that formulated or had this resin formulated originally were making boats, and you get pretty involved with the material when you make boats. So they were hoping to preserve their well-being by asking the chemist to formulate with the friendliest possible components. Normally, if I wasn't making a film, I'd have a little fan over here, and I would be benefiting from a bunch of clean air blowing across me. But today, we're going to do this quickly anyhow, so my exposure time will be low. And I mean, this isn't good for you, but it's not awful either. Plenty of people use this stuff all over the world to put together wooden boats, which requires usually months of exposure. And if you can keep it off you and be sensible about ventilation, you're probably okay. But you can see the material's soaking up the epoxy pretty well over here. So even though this MDF material, the medium density fiberboard, is wood particles and some kind of bonding agent. I'm not sure exactly what it is. There's obviously some voids in this. And maybe we'll just let this sit for a minute and see how much gets absorbed by the MDF. Although this is the so-called fast hardener, we have about, probably 20 minutes open time at 70 Fahrenheit, which today we have 66. So not a big rush, even though it's called fast. And for a simple layup like this, it's certainly not too fast. So I had a roller ready to even this out, but I'm not sure I'm gonna need it. Looks pretty good. You can tell by the color that the material's pretty evenly spread. I think it's going to be all right. I like to use the West System resin partly because it's the first kind that I was familiar with, and it was an innovative product when it first came out. Was an epoxy resin system that was formulated again for low toxicity and made available to retail customers, which before that didn't have access to it. So I'm seeing a pretty good film here. I think we're good. I don't see any big thirsty motion by the surface. It seems like the epoxy is standing on the surface okay. So and then just something to remember about epoxy is that it's not really an adhesive. It's just a resin that tends to stick to most things. So it turns out it's excellent for bonding. But if you have good surfaces, you don't need a lot of pressure. So you just need to bring the surfaces in contact, and then when the resin hardens, not by solvent evaporation, as we were saying, but by chemical reaction, then the parts are stuck together for all practical purposes. Okay. Or maybe this way. Maybe this way. There's going to be always one challenge with this, with epoxy, is hydroplaning, because it's going to act kind of like a lubricant. So you have to watch out for the parts skating around. We'll try our best to Keep them lined up while we clamp. Okay. Should probably stay put. If you didn't have all these nice clamps, you could use, oh gosh, almost any way of putting pressure on this, including, you know, a 5-gallon pail with water in it. Again, if the parts are flat and they fit well, like these do, very little pressure is needed, really. Just enough to bring the surfaces close together. Don't need to go crazy clamping. All right, and let's just see if the corners look happy. Oh, seeing a little movement there. Okay, well. Put some clamps around the edge. One thing that's super important with epoxy is cleanup. So much easier to wipe it off when it's a liquid than it is to try and chip it off when it's cured. So when we're all clamped, I'll go around and clean up the squeeze out as best I can so I don't have to try and sand it off afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to wipe up as best I can, and here's the beginning of our new carving nest method.